Hi guys, and welcome to another video. This video is going to be a nice short quick quiz to be done in the days leading up to the AQA GCSE Geography Paper 2 exam. Now the first section of the exam that you're going to face is urban issues and challenges, and this is all about towns and cities. The cities growing and creating both challenges and opportunities. Now one of the major case studies that you could face is a city in the HIC that has experienced urban change. So the urban change is looked at through the lens of a HIC and an LICNEE. Now what you'll notice on the screen are a series of 9 questions. How this video is intended to work is you pause the video and attempt to answer the questions on the screen. You can do that on a mini whiteboard, on some flashcards, on a piece of paper. Once you've had a go, you can unpause the video and you can see the answers and maybe me talking a bit more about these topics as well. But it is absolutely key that by trying to test yourself first, it helps your brain work a little bit better to remembering this information for the exam. So we'll start off with our first round, which is all about a city in a HIC which is experiencing urban change. There are 9 questions. I'd like you to pause the video, then unpause once you've had a go. Okay, so let's flash some answers up on the board. For number 1, the city is obviously Liverpool, a city in a HIC that has had massive change over the last 100 years. Liverpool is significant on an international scale because of its major international universities, the International John Lennon Airport, but also the significance of bands like the Beatles has had on the world as a whole. On a national scale, Liverpool is the 7th largest shopping destination in the UK. It held the UK's first Chinatown. And let's not forget sport. The Grand National is held in Aintree. Then you have Liverpool and Everton football clubs where thousands of fans from all over the UK come to Liverpool to watch them on a weekend. Now, Liverpool's biggest problem or its biggest change is it entered something called urban decline. And the cause of that urban decline was the closure of the docks or the containerization. Now, globalization also has a part in this because globalization meant that other jobs went abroad from manufacturing. But in Liverpool, the main thing was the closure of those docks. And this was significant because the docks were a major employer in Liverpool and it led to a massive sequence of urban decline. It led to the current day significantly lower life expectancies in Anfield than there are in Egberth or Woolton, higher crime rates, lower GCSE scores amongst the city. On an economic standpoint, we've still got extremely high unemployment and deprivation compared to other parts of the UK. In Anfield, unemployment is about 9% compared to the UK average of about 4%. It leads to a cycle of decline. People have less money, so there's loss of businesses, loss of taxes, loss of investment, and areas continue to decline and decline and decline. Now, the only way we can actually solve this decline is by investing money. And one of the big things they did in Liverpool was urban regeneration, £1 billion on the Albert Dock and Liverpool One. It massively increased tourism in the area. It massively increased the number of people visiting Liverpool for shopping. And it created a series of positive multiplier effects where the income generated from the regeneration encouraged new business, created jobs, more disposable income in the economy, so more spent in local business, more tax revenue for Liverpool City Council to then invest in a new youth centre in Anfield, or an employment project or a skills project for adults who are out of work in that area. And the final point, which would be kind of on a 9 marker, has quality of life improved for everybody in Liverpool? Well, the answer's some, but not all. You know, if you're one of the 53,000 people who've got a job in tourism, then you might be saying, well, actually, my life has improved as a result of these opportunities in Liverpool. However, we have to caveat that by saying there's still quite large unemployment in Anfield due to lack of investment and skills. On to round 2. And something that really tends to throw people are urban transport solutions. And in this case, what methods of transport make up Liverpool's integrated transport system? Pause the video, have a think, then unpause. Okay, so we have many, but the 2 most famous ones in Liverpool would be the hydrogen buses, which were introduced to be a nice clean air quality solution. We have the ferry across the Mersey that connects Liverpool and Birkenhead. We also have the Merseyrail trains, which connect Liverpool with St Helens. Now, the idea of these systems are, 1, they're reducing traffic congestion for the environment, but also they allow elderly people to get to hospitals and young people to get to universities and school, and they help the economy massively by having a really strong transport system. However, in Liverpool, unfortunately, they're not perfect. There still isn't enough investment in infrastructure to make people not choose cars. Cars are still king in Liverpool. Okay, next question. What strategy is shown here on the top of Liverpool 1, the large shopping centre as part of regeneration, and why is it done? Pause, think, unpause. It is called urban greening, and it is to improve air quality and encourage new insect and animal habitats to improve biodiversity. Okay, on the idea of urban sustainability, we did another case study looking at a city. So what city is this, and what are the features of urban sustainability that it shows? Pause, think, unpause. It is Freiburg in Germany, and the aspects of their sustainability are urban greening, public transport, renewable energy solutions on houses, solar panels, wind power, stuff like that. Bike lanes for people to use. You can see on the picture the tram on there as well. So that's what urban sustainability refers to, cities becoming more sustainable. Making sure people can still get to work and can still live nicely now without harming the future generations' ability to do the same. Now, the other part of section A is looking at urban change in an LIC or NEE. Now, in the case of my school, that is Rio de Janeiro. And the biggest problem with Rio was the urban change happened so quickly that the government couldn't keep up, and we ended up with these informal, unregulated settlements known as favelas, where the government did not have control over them in a social, economic, or environmental way. So we're looking at challenges inside the favelas here. We've got 3. Pause the video, have a think about what that might be, then unpause the video for the answers. So on a social standpoint, we have the Red Command drug gang. The gangs took over. They led to a huge amount of violence in the favelas, kids missing school to join in gang violence. You could also have really high infant mortality rates due to lack of hospitals, or the fact that only 50% of 14-year-olds actually leave school at that age. So if you're 14 years old, you've got a 50-50 chance of continuing education. From an economic standpoint, the biggest challenge is the informal jobs alongside unemployment. Informal meaning kind of cash in hand, not regulated, which doesn't raise much tax revenue at all for the government, so they can't then reinvest in the favelas. When the environmental one shown here would be waste disposal or water pollution as well. Well done if you got those. Another aspect of this case study they can ask you about is projects used to improve quality of life for the urban poor. Now again, the wording of this question is quite challenging. Quality of life simply refers to the standard of someone's health, wealth, education, their general happiness, their mental health, their ability to pay for things they like, their disposable income. The urban poor just means the poorest people within the city. So think of the project, pause the video, then unpause. And the example would be the Favela Bairro project, where they installed this massive cable car. It led to less congestion in these favela streets. It helped people get outside the favelas for work, made it safer, multiplier effects there. They also did the Schools for Tomorrow program, where they built schools in the kind of worst favelas to encourage free education for young people, free. And the other cool one I really like is the mobile midwives, where they couldn't really work out how to build a hospital, so they trained midwives to go on motorbikes to deliver infant care to reduce infant mortality in that area. And now moving on to section B of the exam, the changing economic world. Now this section of the exam primarily focuses on countries. Cities do play a role, obviously, but the section B is predominantly about countries: Nigeria, India, the United Kingdom. And I'm going to start off with a series of questions. What is uneven development? Can we have a historic cause, a physical cause, and an economic cause? And can we have two consequences? Pause the video, unpause when you're ready, and we'll go through the answers. So first off, uneven development just means a disparity in health, wealth, and education. So for example, a high-income country like the United Kingdom has a life expectancy of 81, a GDP per capita of over 30,000. It has a literacy rate of 99%. If I go to Chad, the life expectancy might be lower, 50 years old. The GDP per capita might be lower, $500. And the literacy rate might be significantly lower as well, maybe 20-30%. That's called uneven development. Historically, the main causes of uneven development are colonialism and war, where HICs took control and exploited the gains of lesser nations in that time. So, for example, the British are kind of claimed to have stolen $1 trillion worth of wealth from India during the colonial period. And wars play a big role as well. We think about why Afghanistan is less healthy, less wealthy, less educated in the UK when they were fighting wars against the Americans and the Soviets and the British in their recent history. On a physical scale, it would be things like climate, and my favourite one here would be tropical diseases like malaria. You only find them in like equatorial zones, and they're really nasty diseases that affect kids more than adults, often going to school. But also like drought and famine would work as well in desert areas, or the fact that a country might be landlocked, so unable to trade, so it falls behind economically. And then finally, the economic cause on here would be corruption. TNCs are a big economic cause, and we'll come back to them when TNCs kind of exploit the natural resources and when the profits go back to HICs, making them richer. Unfair trade blocks or rules. And then the consequences are the same as the actual outcome. There are disparities in health, wealth, and education. But the other really big one, and this has been in the news when you see the small boats crossings, is international migration. As that gap between rich and poor widens or continues to remain wide or uneven, people are now desperate to move to these HICs for a better life. And so international migration is an impact of uneven development when we look at this, or an impact of the development gap, as you might call it as well. Now, another thing on here is the demographic transition model, and it shows how population changes over time. And the question on this slide here is, why does birth rate decline in stage 2? So have a look at the demographic transition model, think of your answer, then unpause the video. Well, the answer is that in stage 2, you can see that kind of birth rate start to fall in stage 3, shouldn't it? In stage 3. And the reason why it starts to fall in stage 3 is the education of women, vaccination programs, etc. The death rate falls in stage 2 because of vaccination projects and better education on sanitation, stuff like that as well. Okay, now finishing off our development gap stuff, we need to think about some strategies to reduce it. So how could we reduce the gap between HSE and LIC? There are 4 strategies here. And remember, when you are explaining these strategies, this means that it's going to improve at least one aspect of health, wealth, and education in this exam. So pause the video, see if you can come up with the 4 strategies, and then unpause the video. So I had aid, intermediate technology, which is technology that you can use, or appropriate technology, which is technology you can use that doesn't require lots of training or skill or electricity. Debt relief, and microfinance loans. All of those things can trigger some sort of multiplier effect long term. Aid is probably the worst one because you can become reliant on aid. It doesn't necessarily make you actually solve the problems like the other ones do. And the other big strategy for reducing the development gap is tourism. And the example we looked at is Kenya, which obviously has a massive safari. Kenya's an LIC, huge safari. So I'd like to pause the video, please, because the question could say, evaluate tourism as a strategy. What are the pros and cons of it? So pause the video, then unpause once you've answered the questions. So positives, and you can note some of these down, multiplier effect. Huge amount of income, £5.3 billion to Kenya's economy, 200,000 jobs. Compare that with Liverpool, by the way, 53,000. It's a really big industry, this, isn't it, in Kenya? 12% of their GDP. Direct and indirect is insane, really. That's one in 10 of their pounds comes from tourism, which they can then reinvest in multiplier effects and local businesses and infrastructure improvement, all that sort of stuff. However, we have to be clear here. The profits often go to HIC tour operators. If you book with TUI or Thompson or Thompson around TUI, and if some of the holiday company that you've heard of to go in Kenya, well, they're going to keep a lot of the profits, aren't they? It can destroy the natural environment, and locals can become really dependent on low-paying jobs as well. Where they might be working in a hotel that's quite low pay, but they become dependent on it, so they don't necessarily learn the skills to work in the culinary sector, perhaps. But also, what if something like COVID happens? We're in a bit of trouble there. So have a little read through those. You only really need one pro and one con, so maybe go for the top one of the negatives as well. And then within this topic, we also look at a country, a case study of an LICNEE that is experiencing economic development. And our country is Nigeria, which I've answered the first question on there for you. So thinking about Nigeria, we need to know what strategies they're using to overcome these issues, what might hinder their development, and what strategy they're using to improve quality of life. There's lots of different answers to pictures to help you. Have a think on the screen, pause and unpause once you're ready. So the main ones in Nigeria are manufacturing and the TNC shell from oil extraction. Multiplier effects. We know it's terrible for the environment. Bodo oil spill, health benefit. People going blind because of the oil and the chemicals that were leaking into the water supply. But the multiplier effects are massive. This is $20 billion a year for the Nigerian economy. It's huge. They are being hindered by all the environmental impacts of oil drilling, so that will hold Nigeria back from becoming a HIC. We've also got groups like Boko Haram operating in the north of the country, which are obviously causing major problems as well. And then finally, one strategy to improve quality of life, well, we have some aid like the Nets for Life project, which is my favourite one, which is the reducing malaria. But they've also changed their trading relationship towards China. Because Chinese investment has made loads of urban transport, so like a bullet train, which Nigeria hopes will create those multiplier effects of their economy in the same way that High Speed 2 would in Britain or the integrated transport in Liverpool. But the Chinese are the ones that are driving that now in the future. And then the final part of section B, which is a really tough section, is all about the UK's changing economy. Now, there are lots of different things we can look at here. But the UK has gone through a massive change where we now have regional inequalities, there's problems with rural areas, and there's issues with globalisation. So I'd like to think about this. Can you think of the problem that is being shown in these three pictures here? You can pause the video, then unpause once you've done. Okay, so first off, UK regional inequality, we have the north-south divide, where the north, on average, if you're born there, you're less wealthy, less educated, less healthy. For the rural areas, we have two case studies. The Outer Hebrides in Scotland have entered a cycle of decline where the services are shutting down, people are moving away, whereas South Cambridgeshire, with all those science parks near Cambridge, has had a massive growth in population because of all the high-paying jobs. Great for the local economy, great for the multiplier effect, but traffic congestion there is now massive. Locals are being pushed out of their homes by the more wealthy people that are moving in. Not ideal. And then globalisation, led to the outsourcing of jobs, so car manufacturing, call centres, glass and steel production in the UK, car making, all went to cheaper places abroad, so TNTs can make more profit. It led to massive unemployment, particularly in the north of the country. And then if we're thinking about the UK, it's geography. We know what the problems are. We know what the impacts are. We need to think of some solutions. So the UK is trying to solve regional divides. It's trying to increase its participation in the knowledge economy, so high-paying tertiary, quaternary jobs, and it's trying to improve its transport. Can you name the 3 strategies, please? All right, then. So for this one is the Liverpool to Port, designed to increase trade and jobs in Liverpool. We have Cambridge Science Park, which they're investing in massively in that quaternary, tertiary industry. And then we have High Speed 2, which ultimately did fail because it was too expensive. But the bullet train was meant to connect the UK with faster journey times overall. And then I think the final part of this quiz is the final section looking at food. Now, when we looked at resource management, there are more questions you could ask about this section about the UK's water deficits or divides or other little examples. But ultimately, the 6-mark questions will mostly focus on case study A or B on the screen, or maybe something else as well. So around the world, we have massive food insecurity, where people can't access safe, reliable, affordable food. Why is that? War, droughts, conflict, what are the impacts of that? Malnutrition, kids missing school, adults missing work, famines, death, starvation. But we're looking at the solutions here of food insecurity. We've got A, B, C. Can you name the different solutions for food insecurity? Pause, then unpause once you're done. So for A, we've got Almeria in Spain, the massive greenhouses that contribute huge amounts of their GDP. The local or sustainable scheme is Goat Aid in Tanzania, where they use those toboggan goats, they give it to locals. They loan them the goat. The goats are used to produce milk. They sell the milk. It produces multiplier effects to get more goats. They can use that money to create a sustainable food supply of protein, but also to maybe pay for the oldest son to go to school so he can then go and work in a higher paying job and create a better life and reduce that development gap. There are also other strategies to increasing food supply, genetically modified crops being a good example, irrigation, aquaponics or aeroponics, where we're growing plants without soil, all on there as well. Okay, so that is the quiz for this video. Hopefully you found it useful. If there are anything on the quiz that you've missed or you didn't really understand, it might be worth going back on this video and choosing those cases or choosing those examples to read over before you sit the exam. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.